Hi guys, hope you're doing well and thank you for taking your time to watch my video. My name is Abhi Gupta and I'm currently pursuing a master's in QMM. So while thinking of what to do my final project on, I knew the easiest way would be a financial statement. It'd be quite easy to generate, plus all the students in the class are already familiar with financial statements. But I thought it would not be very interesting as we all know how bland they can be. So this semester I took a simulation class. Now simulation is essentially done when it's really hard to replicate real life situations. For example, I did my project on check-in and security at JFK Terminal 5. It's very difficult to conduct an observational study to generate statistics that are robust, meaning we would have to collect enough data so it accurately represents the population. With nearly 5 million people going through the terminal each year, we would have to observe at least a few 100,000 people so it can represent our population. Since it can take a lot of manpower and time, it's better to do a simulation on Excel. And now this is the great thing about Excel. Forecasting, regression, and simulating, which can cost hundreds and thousands of dollars, can be easily done in Excel. So the purpose of my study is to accurately build a macro tool to predict how long on average it would take a passenger to go through check-in and security. Now, this is how my macro tool looks now. Now, before we get into all the how we utilize it and how we play around with it, let's talk about where we got our data from. Now, there are a few calculations that we needed to perform before we can generate statistics for our sheet. So the first is arrival times for the different types of passengers. There are two different types of passengers. There's the leisure traveler and the business traveler. Now the leisure traveler is just someone traveling for touring purposes, whereas a business traveler is obviously a business person. From the Port Authority Airport Traffic Report of 2016, we found out that nearly 5,115,585 people traveled. Also in the report, we were told that 82.5% were leisure travelers and 17.5% were business travelers. By taking all these numbers and doing simple math, we calculated that every 7 seconds a leisure traveler enters the airport and every 35 seconds a business traveler enters the airport. Now, I created a module for the different outcomes and variety that are possible for regular travel and a business traveler. And as we can see here, all of these times are around the 30-minute mark. These are calculated from how long it takes someone at check-in and kiosk and how long it takes someone at security, whether it's TSA pre-check or regular security. Now, this chart over here, time of completion, generates how much time each of these combinations take. Since this chart is based on these numbers, if we refresh it, all the random number generators re-update and we can see how much on average it would take to complete with the different combinations. We can consistently see here that standard is always the highest, whereas for a business traveler, a kiosk and a pre-check takes the lowest amount of time. Furthermore, we can see the same message being displayed in this graph here, which shows the average time of completion. The average time of completion is around 30 minutes usually. Now, as we can see here, it generally depicts a natural bell curve with the mean being around 30. Now, you're wondering where I got 30 minutes from. So these times here are based upon prior studies that were done in other big airports, the most famous one being in Lisbon, Portugal. They calculated that the average check-in and standard check-in times to be near 8 and 9 minutes, whereas the kiosk time is around 4 minutes. And they said similar things about TSA pre-check and regular security. Now, the cool thing about Excel is random number generations. This allows for me to replicate my study hundreds, if not thousands of times at the click of a button. So this chart depicts the average time it takes to go through security, which I calculated over here. So since I'm using random number generators, every time I update it, the data points on these sheets update. Now, let's go on to our calculator sheet. Now, this is where all of the back work is being done. This is a very unique sheet because it is 100% utilized by the macro. All of these numbers here are calculated from individual sheets that I've created for each month. Now, the reason I created individual sheets is because some months are busier than others. That means from the report, we found out that August and July are the busiest months. Now, with that in mind, we needed a way to buff up the time when a user inputs date of travel as August or July. There needed to be a way for the time we're calculating to be increased because we know it takes longer during those months. So by creating these sheets, we were able to address this issue. Also, we were able to create proxy variables such as food, walking, and bathroom, um, because these are walking is really important because when we talk about service time, we only talk about the time it takes to utilize the service. You don't talk about the time it takes to stand in line or walk to the service. So this is a proxy that's very necessary to result in a true outcome. The food and the bathroom decision are based on the Port Authority of 2016 report. Now, how does this all work? So this sheet is utilizing macro, which is inserted here, that would reference this sheet over here. Now, if we go to the VBA editor and we look at the code, as you can see, there are a few macros in play here. This is primarily because as soon as you press calculate here, this sheet references the date of travel. Based upon the month, it activates the correct sheet. As you can see, every sheet has an activate module here. Once it is activated, the macro then reads the respective month's data and calculates it. And then it spits it out in this array here called total time. And that would be copied over here. So let's try to run this a few times to see what I mean. So 5, 18, 18 of date of travel. Let's say I'm traveling with 2 people. I want to use a standard check-in, and I am not TSA pre-qualified. So this is essentially what the macro is doing is it's showing that I'm traveling on 5/18. So we go to May, and it would activate the May sheet and use the calculations there. Now it is saying it would take me 25 minutes, 41 seconds on average to go through security. If I run this again, 28 minutes. So as we can see, it's kind of jumping a little bit around the place, but kind of stays close to the mean average of 30 minutes. Now, let's say, for example, we are traveling on a holiday, 6/4/18. You see the time jumped up very drastically. This is because I have proxied for that variable in my holiday sheet. So I know during the holiday season, airports are a mess. Therefore, to make this a true representation of how long it would take in an airport, I created this variable, and on any holiday that you select, time automatically gets added on to the time predictor. So this sheet is very dynamic in that sense. Another very interesting feature that I found, which I truly love about Excel, is how user friendly it is, because it's very hard to replicate a program where the user has full control over. But this is one of the few sheets where I feel as though the user has complete control over. And as soon as you press calculate time, in an instant, the numbers are depicted here. You can even press reset to reset all of the fields. And let's say I want to travel again, 6/4/18, for the summer. 1/1. And now let's say we do a kiosk check-in and we are TSA pre-qualified. We see we get a lower time. So essentially, this macro is understanding all of the inputs that the user is putting and accurately calculating time from this calculation matrix inputted here. Now, that's a great thing about macros. You don't see any of the work happening, and it happens also fast. It's very hard to depict in other programs. So overall, I learned so much about Excel from this project, particularly how random number generators can be used with macros to create a dynamic user program. I also appreciate Microsoft's recent addition of macro buttons. As you can see, I have a button here and here. For users to feel like it's pressing a button rather than pressing enter is such a good feeling, especially I feel that way, because you get excited about what the results may potentially be. Now, this is my project. As I stated when I first started, my purpose was to create a user input program that calculated time to go through check-in and security at domestic airport. Now, take this with caution. These are based on hundreds of random number generators and give out averages, which in reality will work most of the times, but not all the times. Therefore, this summer, always go early and have a safe travel. Thank you.